Welcome to the Age of Fission radio show with your host, Lonnie Clark. We stand together and accept that we now live in a world transformed by Fukushima. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here on UCY.TV radio. We relentlessly engage every ear that listens. We expose and confront the complete lack of accountability for the nuclear industry. Consider social engineering programs who view our bodies, minds, and souls as assets on a balance sheet. We discuss vital current issues, interview activists, and engage our audience in an effort to allow all voices to be heard. The Age of Fission radio show creates a venue that all will choose. We encourage our listeners to reclaim their power and their courage to take action and save our planet from the ravages of greed and indifference. Our actions matter. Every voice matters. We remind our listeners that happiness is resistance. Love is greater than fear. Good morning, UCY.TV radio listeners. This is Lonnie Clark with the Age of Fission radio show. Today is January 15th, 2018. We're a full 2 weeks in. It's 8 o'clock in the morning here in Eugene, Oregon, and it is, as usual, gray and cold because it is still January. But I want to thank you for joining us, and I want to thank our Eugene affiliate, KEPW, for carrying our show. And I'm super excited about our guest today, Dave Parrish from Operation Save the Earth. Dave puts out a weekly Fuku Friday announcement on YouTube every week. It's, very short. And honestly, it is kind of a lifeline for me, and I super appreciate it. Thank you, Dave, for joining us.
Always a pleasure, Lonnie. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. So, your video this last week was really about living and about us deciding that we are going to live and make every day valuable. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. I mean, it's kind of at the core of for Operation Save the Earth. I talk about it every week and how, if you just set aside 8 minutes in your schedule every day, I call it superhero time, where you put on the cape and the boots and you really dedicate that little amount of time to making a difference. Whether it's, you're talking to friends about Fukushima, or you're, enlightening the people in your butcher's department about, hey, what's going on with these fish? There's a lot of little different things that you can do every single day with that little bit of time that can really make an impact. And I think if people really understood the value of time and how they can, really utilize it, they'd see how precious it really is.
Yeah, that's actually true. It is really, and it goes so quickly. We're coming up on 7 years since Fukushima happened. 7 long years.
7. I mean, we're actually marking the end of the 7th year and starting the 8th.
That's right. That's exactly right.
So that's
and TEPCO
really
did you see TEPCO's? I don't think you did. We talked about it before we went on air, but TEPCO put out a recent video about then and now, and it looks all neat and tidy, and we are working on it and we're moving on. And they show you the area that's shrunk, the decontamination area. The area where people are. It looks almost as if you can move right back in, right next door to Fukushima, and it's no big deal. Just the power plant itself is, a no-go zone. How is that possible?
Luckily, the people who used to live in that area right next to the plant in Futaba, they know better. They're not going back. They're never going back. I mean, look at Naraha town, just down the road. from the plant. They reopened that town a couple years ago. Only a handful of old people moved back because there's no services, there's no jobs, there's nothing there. You know, the reality is, you know, they can spruce things up as much as they want. TEPCO can, you know, insist that things are, you know, hunky-dory and better now. But, you know, the reality is quite different. Look at any video that SafeCast has done. Look at any, you know, of the data that's been gathered by boots-on-the-ground people there with dosimeters and other equipment to show that hot particles are spread throughout the region still.
Right.
You know, and especially they're at the plant. And, you know, TEPCO made a kind of a big deal last year when they said, well, you know, the radiation at the plant is subsided so much in the past 6 years. Come on, give me a break. That, you know, people don't need this protective gear or this protective mask.
That was part of their video.
You know why they really did that, Lonnie? It's because they have a whole area of the plant marked off now where they have all the garbage, basically all the old suits that all the workers used to wear for the past 6-7 years. They have all that stored away somewhere. And it's like this trash heap of protective gear. They don't want to keep adding to that trash heap. That's why they really
for real
to the workers. Oh yeah. I mean, think about it, Lonnie. I mean, if thousands of guys have worked there at the plant.
That's actually true. All of their gear, right? Everything is contaminated every day.
Everything
they can't put it back on.
Contaminated, right? Right, and it's like they didn't throw it in the incinerator, from what I can tell. And
oh my God,
like I said, that's every day. You put on a protective suit, you do your work, you take off your protective suit, it goes in the garbage. So that's thousands and thousands and thousands of protective suits, right? So they got to do some of it. And the thing is, like, well, hey,
how long have they been doing it? Like with lighter gear, though, Dave? Do you know?
It's only been in the last year or so.
That's what I thought.
Said, oh, well, you don't need.
Those guys are going to start dying a lot faster. I was looking at their, the photo yesterday. This video was kind of hilarious, but it was really shocking when it got to the part of, the level of non-safety gear that these men are wearing.
Oh yeah, I mean.
It's shocking.
If I was to go to the plant, there'd be no way I'd be like, God, no, I want the full thing. Give me everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
And look, I understand some of the workers, especially in the early days, they found that protective gear restrictive to what they could do, their movements and everything. But, hey, man, if you want to really contribute to, making it a safer place there at Fukushima Daiichi, you have to make a sacrifice, and you have to say, okay, well, I'm going to gear up so that I can, work longer and, accomplish more while you're there. Because you can only work at the plant, at a plant like this or like at Hanford, for so long. And then eventually you've gotten your yearly limit or more of, radiation exposure, and you can't work anymore, right? You can't do it anymore, and
then you end
there
up getting sick.
Oh, yeah. And that's the other thing that's really sad, Lonnie. Guys die working at the plant. Guys get sick working at the plant. Do we hear about it? Never. Why? Because that state secret law that Japan enacted, 2013, 2012? Right. And ever since then, we don't hear about, the sudden cardiac deaths that have taken place at the plant. We don't hear about, any about, the cancers or anything that have come along the way. We hear later that, so-and-so, got leukemia, and then they won a lawsuit, X number of years later. Oh, yeah, that's fine. But, actually during, because, there's such a delay between your exposure time to either low-dose radiation or even in this case, in Fukushima's case, really high-dose radiation, right?
Well,
I'm sure there are hot spots all throughout that whole
the whole thing. So. I would suggest people, there is something people can do this week. There was a story that Mimi Gervin posted to Facebook. It's by Susanna Frame of K5. It's a bill to help the sick camp for workers get new life. This bill, she reported in her story last year that the Hanford workers, their worker comp claims get rejected at a 52% higher rate than the state average, even though Hanford's the most dangerous. So this bill, there's a bill, House Bill 1723, that is going through, it was introduced last year, but the guy who introduced it, Representative Larry Haler, who's a Republican from Richland, by the way, died before this went through. And so they're putting it through again. And people can call the Washington State Senators and the governor and say, look, we need you to pass this bill to help the Hanford workers. It is unreasonable that Hanford workers, this is a federal program, and the state, this is just a bill to guarantee that people can get help, that they cannot be discriminated against for being out at Hanford.
Yeah, and I hope that the people of Washington really get on their horse and support this bill, because it's so necessary. I mean, obviously, you're not getting help from the federal government on this. And, from what I've come to understand, the state of Washington has had a real contentious relationship with the DOE and everything that's been going on at Hanford for a long time now. They're sick of the feet dragging. They're sick of, all these, claims, not getting processed. So, yeah, it makes absolute sense that, a legislative act is the way to go. But, of course, you're going to get pushback from the nuclear lobby and blah, blah, blah. They'll come up with something else. I find it really fascinating that the nuclear folks have absolutely no problem with spending their resources on pushback. But, when it comes to actually paying people for their suffering and anything like that, oh, no. You were a smoker, so you get disqualified. That was a pre-existing condition. Your cancer came from that instead. Oh, really? So you're saying to me that thyroid cancer comes from smoking? Wrong. Do your research there, homie. Don't try snowing us with that.
Well, that is the amazing part, is that they would rather twist like a pretzel to lie and figure out a way to deny. But you know why they do it? I mean, it does make logical sense, because they have to deny it. Because if they didn't, then all the people that have gotten sick from this are going to start
be lining up outside the door.
I mean, just like I did a simple thing on my YouTube channel where I took the map of what the CDC says are all the disabilities of children with disabilities. And then I printed out a map of where all the nuclear power plants are, and I put them one on top of the other and held it up to the light. And literally the area where children have a high level of disabilities, it's like the nuclear power plants were at the center, and then the ink blotted out. You know what I mean? Yeah. There is a direct correlation to that. And the fact is, we know that, because they know that for every 2 rads in the air for a population of 1 million people, only 1 million people, we will get 225,000 birth defects every year, period. Yeah. This is why we have such a spike in childhood diseases, childhood ailments, childhood brain cancer, childhood leukemia. I mean, autism. Autism is one of the first things that shows up around exposure to low-level radioactivity.
And when I was a kid, Lonnie, autism wasn't even a thing.
Right.
Right? And now it's so common all of a sudden. Gee, I wonder why.
Well, there's also a direct correlation to the way they create their vaccines now, putting the 3 measles, mumps, and rubella in a single shot. They skyrocketed but not only that, it's these vaccines. Really, you can look at the level of vaccines. But when we were younger, there weren't very many autistic people because they gave us our shots separately. So that's another whole discussion. Right. But you see how they mix all this stuff in? This was the interesting thing, Dave. I did I read an article on my YouTube channel about the forever chemicals. Quite interestingly enough, they are just about as toxic as the nuclear pollution, and they were also introduced into our environment in the early 40s.
Yep.
In a big way. They were just it was like in the early 40s, their quest to create the nuclear bomb because you need these forever chemicals also. They're part of that whole industrialized military complex of we need to have those things to create the kind of weapons we want to get.
Yeah. And, that's far more important than human health, right? Let's create these poisonous things that are going to kill everybody. And, to create, weapons of mass destruction that will kill even more of everybody. For what?
Right.
To make a buck? I mean,
right.
Look, nuclear industry, you've been riding high off the hog for the past 70 years, making billions upon billions upon billions of dollars, right? Hey, guess what? It's time to reinvest. Here in 2018, there is no place for nuclear any longer. And, I'm seeing, the nuclear power industry, circle the wagons right now and, try to protect themselves. It's like, you should have learned how to protect yourself from yourself a long time ago, nuclear power industry, because you are the one that's, that's killing yourself right now. And, I don't have to do any work. You're doing all the work. You've priced yourself out of the market. You've done all this, horrific stuff. The next generation will not buy your product whatsoever. They understand, how much of a lame deal nuclear energy is in totality. So, game over. Learn what game over is and learn how to lose with a little grace, nuclear power industry, because, you had your shot and, we need it for this and that in the future. No, you don't. You've been talking about the same junk for the past 30 years. This, we're going to have cold fusion. We're going to have, salt, molten salt reactors that are going to revolutionize the industry. No, you're not. You've been talking about that same stuff over and over and over again. It's only in the lab. It's only in the lab. It's never going to reach mass production. And, all these deals to we're going to bail out this, nuclear company, that nuclear company. We're going to make sure that, these projects get done and blah, blah, blah. Just because they say that this is going to happen and they release the money for it does not mean that it's going to happen. It releases the money. It takes money out of the taxpayer and the ratepayer's pocket to pay somebody else, and that's the last nickel that they're going to get, because pretty soon nuclear, that's it. The only future that they have is in waste management, and they need to learn how to do that better, because they sure have been messing that up too.
Well, this is my thinking, and even just about the waste management, I think they are missing a huge opportunity to develop an industry on remediating the earth. The damage is so great. Yeah. We are going to need many hands to spread the microbes, to develop the microbes. We know that phytoremediation is a way to deal with it. We know they've discovered that mushrooms are like a big, gigantic computer. They calculate the dirt and the earth and figure out what is this thing, what can we produce, how can we recreate our DNA to feed this dirt back. So it's a big science that they're missing out on, and it's billions of dollars that people would gladly pay. This is a thing, see, I think it's very important for us to say to them, look, we have, like they talk about in The Fifth Sacred Thing, this book that I'm reading, we have room for you on our side of the table when you're ready to join us. You do not have to keep working for the perpetrators.
Yeah.
That's
100% true. Yep. And, I have seen some folks in the industry start to realize, hey, you know what? We better get on this waste management thing. And, they want to, take a lead in that. And it's like, great. Yeah, learn how to remediate better and do the things that you see. The problem is, you have the higher-ups, the NRCs, the IAEAs, these so-called, organizations that are there to promote safe nuclear energy, and that's their first priority, not taking care of the back end whatsoever, right? They're the ones that are, well, this is policy, this is fine. Blah,
it actually blah, blah. Is their directive, Dave, is not to promote safe nuclear energy. Their directive is to promote the use of nuclear energy, and B, to keep humans safe. So we can break that up, because they have to choose, and they have obviously chosen. You can't keep people safe. That was the conclusion of John Goffman and Arthur Tamplin. You cannot keep humanity safe and continue the nuclear program. Those two not on a wide scale. That's not the reality.
Nope. And, I think more and more people are waking up to that. The industry, like I said, is in decline. seriously at this point, they're not coming back. They're not coming back. You can keep, like I said before, pie in the sky dreams about this, that, and the other thing, all you want. The investment money isn't going to be there, and, certainly not the public support. So, learn how to adapt. And, I mean, the nuclear power industry, they can be like, the last company that sold buggy whips. That's where they're heading right now. If that's what you want to do, I'm going to hang on to this buggy whip. It's going to make a comeback. Yeah, keep going that way. The rest of us have already hopped in our automobiles and are driving away from you, so.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's exactly what subsidizing the nuclear industry is all about. Is it's that exact same thing. That's a thing that is past its time where we are. But part of the reason why we're doing this is because they want the wars. They want the nuclear weapons that comes out of this. They can't just say, but don't they have enough nuclear waste to build all the nuclear weapons they want in the world? Or does it end up like going too cold that they have to keep producing it?
Boy, that's a good question. I don't have a good answer for it.
Okay, I don't understand that. I'll ask someone. I'm sure one of our viewers or someone listening to this show will know that answer. So I'll look for some answers in the comment section. By the way, people can see this podcast on UCY TV on YouTube. They post automatically about 20 minutes after the show ends. So
yeah, they're so handy. You've had so many great guests on lately. Talking to Mimi and talking to Chris, and it's been great. And that's the thing. Fuku fighters are super smart. Somebody, like you said, somebody in your audience is going to know the answer to that. You know it. I've learned so much from everybody else because when I came into this, I didn't know nothing about nuclear energy at all. Yeah. So I had to learn.
Who's really given up her retirement, and she was an analyst by trade for her career, an analyst for the state of California. So when she got involved, she started analyzing. She went to the NRC website and started going, wait a minute, what about this and what about this? And then she started digging into it, and it's really literally taking up her life. She's not retired. She's doing this. And for what? For the planet, for the betterment of the planet. Because this is about, seriously, the future of our planet. It's not just, it's one thing to say, okay, I'm going to go off grid and I'm not going to be part of it. But we still need to get engaged with the people who are the decision makers to prevent them from making insidiously incorrect decisions repeatedly.
Definitely. And, we have the core people to do it. Like you said, Mimi, why retire when you have this calling? Activism chooses you, they always say. It's not something that, I'm going to do this today. Or, it's something that hits you on a personal level and then it becomes your thing.
It's what Tom Ackerman says, acting your conscience. You have to do what you know you have to do.
And that's the same conclusion I had to come to myself. Because when Fukushima happened, I was like everybody else. I just, Japan, they got this. Don't worry about it. And then when I found out how bad it really was, and I went down the rabbit hole to, check out the data and find things out, I was like, whoa, hold up here. We're not being told anything. So then, that's when I started learning for myself. And once I, figured out just how bad things were going to be in the Pacific Ocean, it took me a couple weeks, to get, some data and figure that out. I was like, okay, this is it. I can either ignore this and, try to look at myself in the mirror every single day, or I can use the skills that I've accrued throughout my life to, make a difference, do something about it and have an impact. And that's what I did, and I knew that, the key was being persistent and consistent with the message. If you go back and listen to my very, very old podcast, you're basically going to hear the exact same things that I'm saying today. It's just, a little bit different, a little bit more updated, I wish, we were further along than we are now, but by the same token, I look at the state of the nuclear power industry and it's, garbage. I look at, how everyone has awareness about Fukushima now that they didn't in 2012, 2013. And that's because the Fuku fighters, like I said, they show up every day and they educate people. And that's step one of our plan. That's the whole key. If you got to know more do more and be more about what's going on with this in particular. I mean, especially if you got kids, grandkids, little kids that you love and care about. Hey, guess what? Radiation affects them 50% more than they do you grown up. So they're far more susceptible to the ill effects of radioactive exposure. And is that not important enough for you to actually do something, to put a little bit of time in every day and learn more and keep them safe from
well, you know what people say is that, Dave, their response, and I'm sure you've heard this, is like, well, there's so much other poisons out there, like, and also there's that harassment factor where people look at you like you're a kook if you think that radioactivity is harming people from Fukushima, including our elected officials. So this is what we can. I mean, we can do the backwards advocacy, like calling up the House Labor and Workplace Standards Committee in Washington, in the state of Washington. That's where this bill is, 1723. It's been referred to committee, and there's people that you can call there, like Mike Sells. He's a Democrat in Washington. I'm going to give his number out. It's 360-786-7840. That guy's name is Mike Sells. He's the chairman of this committee, House Labor and Workplace Standards Committee, where this bill 1723 is. All it asks for is for the people who worked at Hanford to be able to get their claims paid and to give them medical help, to force the medical industry not to deny the claims of the people at Hanford.
Yeah, I mean, how folks to make a phone call. It takes less than 8 minutes to make a phone call and just, let people know, let your congressman know, let Mike know that this is important. This is important not just for the workers.
Even if you don't live there. I mean, you don't have to be part of the state of Washington. People calling up and knowing that they're in the public arena, that the rest of the country is looking at it, it will force them to take more of a humane thing. And I think this bill has a lot of sympathy in this because it is a Democratic state, right? So I think it may have but we can't take that for granted because on the bill 3053, right, there's some pretty decent Democrats that are backing it, including the Democratic congressman from St. Louis, from where the Westlake landfill is.
Great.
Lacey Clay.
See, again, the impact of people in that region, constantly being on their elected officials about problems like this, it makes a difference. When you put, industries or, individuals are on notice in the public forum, to elected officials, to the press, to even just your neighbors, that you're creating a resonance that is, creates change, right? So by all means, let's have a lot more of that. And, with this bill that you're talking about, Lonnie, I know that, crafting bills and stuff like that, it takes time. But I got a question for you. What about the sailors from Operation Tamagotchi?
Yeah, the talk about
sailors that. who were getting sicker every day because they took the brunt of the nuclear fallout from Fukushima Daiichi back in 2011. We already have 7 sailors that have died from this, and how many are sick? There's all these poor folks. Where's the congressional support? Where is everybody who says they stand up for the troops? I don't see it. I don't see people standing up for these troops over here that made that sacrifice.
Well, this is the thing,
try to be
that lady, Judge Sammartano, said that case does not belong in the United States. It belongs in Japan. So maybe, Dave, you can explain what that will mean, because it's not justice, that's for sure.
No, it certainly isn't. I mean, the Ninth Circuit Court said that, initially that this case that the sailors have, that's a case against TEPCO and General Electric for what happened at Fukushima Daiichi. TEPCO was running the plant. General Electric designed the plant at Fukushima Daiichi. With the meltdown that took place in March of 2011, all these sailors offshore in relief effort, like I said, getting hit with all this radiation. And then, the Navy, the Navy's been really weird about this. I've not been able to really figure this out. On one hand, the Navy seems to support the troops, but on the other hand, the Navy also supports what the nuclear power industry is all about. And I'm sure there's a lot of close ties between the Navy and nuclear energy because how much of their fleet is nuclear, so there's a lot of, mixed messaging going on there. But, when the Ninth Circuit Court said, okay, this is going to be tried in the United States, how many years ago? This is like 4 or 5 years ago. We were like, yay, this is finally going to, it was in 2014. That's when it was. And, I was like, yes, we're going to finally get justice for these guys, right? But no. Why? Because TEPCO and GE, they just kept appealing and appealing and appealing. I mean, how many appeals do you get? Apparently, if you're a nuclear lobbyist, every appeal possible. Because, they just kept appealing and appealing and appealing until they got what they wanted, not what the sailors need or want. So, now they're saying, hey, you can't try this court case in the United States. It doesn't really fit there anymore. You need to go try it in Japan. And, TEPCO, of course, is jumping up and down, yay, yay, and GE's, hey, we dodged a bullet. It's like, oh, really? Guys, all you're doing is prolonging your own deaths, okay? Because there are constantly court cases against TEPCO in Japan. There's civil court cases that have been won every single time. The courts in Japan realize what's fair, okay? So the people who sue TEPCO in Japan, they have had success, all right? Now, does that mean that the sailors can have success there in Japan if the court case moves over there? I don't know. I know it's not advantageous for them. It'd be much more advantageous for them to have it tried here in a U.S. court because it's like you said in the pre-interview that these were United States ships, whereas these sailors got damaged, got injured by this stuff.
It was
right?
on their when a U.S. ship is considered U.S. territory, period.
Right, and it was in a joint relief effort with Japan, the United States government with Japan. This is all part of a thing. This was a U.S. operation.
Look into this judge's financial holdings. She has a vested interest in General Electric, in the nuclear industry. She has stock in this. Her stocks show that she has a vested interest. Her financial disclosure. You can go to I forget the name of it, but judicial law or something stupid like that. It's some registry where judges have to disclose their financial disclosure stuff. It's public knowledge because they're judges. And you can look it up, and if you dig into it, the stock holdings that she has are in fact investments in TEPCO and in the nuclear industry in General Electric. So you're going to tell me that she's completely unbiased? I mean, she has stock in that industry.
Yeah, and when GE stock goes down to 18, 17, 16, and she sees, the ill effects that, all of this is having on that industry, well, guess what? It hurts her bottom line, right? And and apparently that's much more important than the health and safety of, the sailors who sacrifice themselves.
Actually, do you know that the homegrown
that's much more important.
Actually, I believe that the Unpatriot Act and the Homegrown Terrorist Act, they basically state that the financial well-being of American industries is far more important than the individual rights of the individual. In fact, let's say we wanted to do create a New Work Monday, right, where we got the whole country to shut down on Monday. The person who started that shutdown could be held as a homegrown terrorist because we're threatening the financial well-being of the country's businesses. That's people don't realize we have our own secrecy laws here. It's not just Japan. Japan was just more out in the open about what their intentions were. The United States does it much more deviously.
That's true. And
what was that guy's name? Christopher. Excuse me, Dave. What did you say?
No. Go on what we're saying.
Well, what was that guy's name? Christopher, the guy that had to go to jail as a terrorist for bidding on land to keep it from being improperly sold. They convicted him because he had the money the next morning, but at the time he made the bid, he did not have the money, so they convicted him on fraud.
Right. That's right. So, I remember that. But, that was the person of conscience standing up and, trying to do something. Sometimes, going to jail, that's the right thing. Ask Sister Megan Rice. Ask, how many, countless, hundreds other of activists, anti-nuclear activists over the years that have, made that sacrifice for themselves. Mm-hmm. Now, here's the thing, that sacrifice, it used to carry a lot more weight. Remember, back in the 60s, if you went to jail, that was a big deal. Now you go to jail, nobody hears about it. Mm-hmm. Sister Megan, when she got thrown in jail, where's the national press coverage? Where's the outrage?
Right, and actually,
an 80-year-old nun into the pokey. Where is it? It's no. Yeah, the mainstream media again goes back to what? Corporate control, relationships with the energy companies. GE owned NBC for how many years, right? The ties that go there are very, very deep. Now, because we're coming into a new era, the next generation, I really believe they're going to revolutionize, not just the internet, but politics and society and, just everything, because they are so web savvy. They know so much already. They know way more than we did when we were kids because they have access to all this information that's free and easy to get on the web and on their phones, right? So they see through all of that mess. They don't buy into it, right? It's only the people who are still slaves to the television and still listen to CNN and MSNBC and Fox and believe that that's the gospel. They're the ones that are troublesome because, if you're just going to keep, enjoying what's being spoon-fed to you, no matter what flavor it is, well, you're not really thinking for yourself. You're not really doing for yourself. You're not doing your own research. That's for damn sure. And these kids coming up, they know about doing their own damn research, and they are doing it. So, they're not just activists. They're deal makers. These kids are going to be ready to revolutionize the world, and I'm excited to watch them do it.
Well, did you listen to Jerome's interview of his niece, Leah? I told him we need to get her back on the air because she's an activist. She's not an activist. She's just living her life in Portland, and she's part of a band and a group. And the way they are actually looking at, we have got to address what's going on now, and we've got to figure out ways to fix it. We cannot just stay. And, for 60 years, we've pretty much let things... since the 70s, really, we thought we won that fight, that environmental fight, right? We figured that when we stopped the nuclear power plants from being built, that everything was really being handled. And I think that's what the Fuku fight is about. Post-Fukushima, we realized things haven't been handled. They're not really handling any of it. I had Erica Dugan on my show talking about how horrendously her family, I have her on regularly, her family's being targeted for getting sick about fracking and saying that it's fracking and talking about it and trying to assert her rights because they were affected horribly. Right? Mm-hmm. So, this whole thing of if you're in America now and you speak out about the wrongs, you're considered some kind of off. It's almost like the Brave New World, like where it's not illegal, but you're very shunned. If nobody's read that book, Brave New World, you need to read the book, Brave New World, because it's not as graphic as 1984 where everything is super violent. But in Brave New World, you're basically shunned if you don't think like the rest of everybody thinks. If you bring up those unmentionables, you're going to be shunned. Yeah. And you will go to jail eventually if you keep up with it, but...
Sure. Yeah, but, is that what the American principle is based upon? Mm-hmm. Keeping your mouth shut?
Right.
No, not at all. It might be what the corporate America principle is, and, the corporatists that are running the show, imperialist America, wants us to keep quiet. But, look, until they shut the internet off, which is not possible because all commerce is tied to the internet now, we have a voice, and we should all use it. And that's what, I keep saying every week, use that time every day to, lift your voice up and, let everybody else know what's really going on. Because, until they, say, oh, martial law, and there's a guy with an AR-15 standing in every corner, until that happens, you still have freedom, you still have rights in this country, and you can still have an impact if you are dedicated to putting that time in every day. So that's
and
on
it's just a little bit of time. And even if that just means sharing stories that talk about this, like this bill 1723 that's in Washington State, you can call them and say, hey, you know what? We really think that the nuclear Hanford workers ought to be taken care of. I don't live in your state, but I really think that should happen. And all that takes is, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Call your own congressman, call your own senator and say, I want you to vote against H.R. 3053, the Nuclear Waste Policy Amendment Act. We think it's not.
They are your representatives, right? These are elected officials who are there to represent your will, right? Sure, they're getting paid, in back rooms by lobbyists to, move things this way and push things that way, sure. But if they want to stay in office, they have got to enact the will of the people.
Right. It's your vote that keeps them there, that makes that money gravy train work for them. So they've got, they don't get your vote, they don't get the gravy train.
It's that simple.
That's the push-pull that they have to play with. Like how far once I get in, how much can I enact that these horrible people want? It really is just about greed running it. And I think we need to change that conversation in our country about, we really have to have people dedicated to making our country and our systems work better, not just figure out ways to, like this subcontracting of everything in our country where the government does not run things, has just really raised our costs up so high, just like the nuclear industry. They charge us so much more money because it's all subcontracted out. Yeah,
it is. And, there's just been a huge structural shift in America about, industry and business away from, the old model where, you come in, you learn the ropes, you hang around for X number of years, you get your pension, and when you retire.
That was the government
running it. We don't live in that world.
No, because now it's all...
Right.
See, they went the Ayn Randian, which is, by the way, a false premise, but they went this whole of, government doesn't know how to run anything, government will destroy everything, and let's privatize everything. And when we did that, the cost doubled. We have prisons for profits, we have schools for profits, we have Medicare for profit, medical for profit. Everything is for profit, and what happens in the profit motive, if that's all you're looking at, is you lose sight of humanity and what we consider to be American ethics, which is why we got this bozo in the White House. I call him Traitor Trump. And in fact, I will say this. I am coming out, and I hope every person who stands against this president will show up on the streets at noon at whatever town you live in. There's people doing it, and it's being called a woman's march, and I've really objected to this because I think this is about not just women's issue. This is about standing up for our Constitution and saying, our country, we cannot be represented by a complete incompetent buffoon who is a racist pig. And honestly, he has taken us down the gutter. He has actually destroyed our standing on the world. And he can use all the bullying fight. And I think the closer that this investigation goes to showing his financial interests in Russia, the more dangerous he is going to become. So, there's two actions that we need to take. Get out on the streets on January 20th and get out on the streets on March 11th. Figure out somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. I've been saying it to people a lot here lately, Lonnie. We are seeing more and more out in the street activism in the past 2-3 years than I can remember in my lifetime. People are showing up for whatever causes, doing this, doing that. And I'm like, yes, we need more of that. And, police crackdown here and blah, blah, blah. But, look.
Practice nonviolence.
Worry
you do not
about
have to.
Right.
You don't have to be. Okay, if they're really going to push back, run away. If they're going to attack you, run away. Don't let yourself get arrested. Don't engage them in a violent way. Resist the urge to call them horrible names. Practice nonviolence, and show them that there's a better way, that, come to this side and we will actually join hands instead of fighting each other.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, one thing that activists have to come to grips with, I did when I first started, is like, you can't save just these people over here. You got to be willing to save everybody, no matter what stripe they're wearing, no matter what they believe in.
That's right.
Because that's what the reality is. You can't be exclusionary in that. You've got to push all in for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So as soon as you get that in your head as a priority, as for your activism, as soon as you do that, believe me, things change for you, and you start seeing things in a different light. And not only is nonviolence, the way to go, it's the only way to go.
It's the only
if they're gonna shoot at you, that they're gonna shoot at you anyways, because whatever, but that you can get around that by smiling and inviting them, like you said, to come join your side. Because what are you trying to do? You're trying to protect their family, their loved ones, their kids, whether they on the other side know it or not. Right. So just show up for them, and know that you're doing that. Know that you're doing that when you're marching in the streets. Know that the people who are trying to oppress you, they just don't know. They don't know what is it you're really trying to do for them.
Well, I think that these really, what we're fighting really is the idea that we need nonstop war. I think that's fundamentally, where the anti-nuclear movement really goes to the heart of. Because these nuclear power plants, the byproduct, the ironic part is the byproduct it gives them the exact product they need to develop nuclear weapons.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean...
but, didn't the UN just pass a resolution banning nuclear weapons?
Do you think the United States cares what they say? The United States didn't agree to that. They didn't. They were one of 2 or 3 that didn't, ratify it.
Please, are you kidding me? Trump just said that he's going to demonetize the UN, right? It's like, oh, we're not giving you guys any more money, blah, 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 for, all these other reasons, right? What the United States wants is whatever the corporatists want, whatever, the people in power and who have the money want. And it's like, okay, well, guess what? That is not what America is about. It's not what it's about. You're supposed to be there for your neighbors. You're supposed to be there for your family. You're supposed to be there to take care and take pride in what this country really stands for. And it's really hard to do that now. I think it's really, really hard to do that. But, as long as the ideal exists, and it's really at the core of what this country is about, then that's something that we can fight for. That's something we can make a stand for every single day in our words and our actions. So, if you're outraged by, the injustices going on with the sailors from Operation Tamagotchi, get on the phone. If you are, just dismayed at, what the Hanford workers have had to go through with, how many of those guys have died themselves, get on the phone. There's just so many things that we can all do, little tiny things. And the argument, oh, somebody else will take care of it, somebody else will do it. No, that's your job. That is your job to make that stand, because are you American? Are you a person of conscience? Do you have friends, family, and loved ones that you care about? If you answered yes to all those things, guess what? You got a job to do, and it's not just to sit there on your butt and, eat chips and watch Dancing with the Stars. No, you got to get off your butt and do the work. I know, I have so many obligations about this and that. I don't have the time. Come on, man. You don't have 8 minutes in the 1,440 minutes that you have every single day to do something with? I doubt that. You just need to put it in the schedule.
Mm-hmm. Exactly right. And it's about just doing it, getting your courage up. That's why I tell people, put your courage feet on, because sometimes you have to just decide. So, courage isn't the lack of fear. The courage is taking action in the face of fear when you know you have to do the right thing, when it's something that you know you must do. It doesn't mean you lack fear. It means you're going to face the fear. You're going to okay, I'll be honest, when I first started calling my elected officials, I was afraid I would be put on a list. And guess what? I was. Mike Pence's office investigated me. I called up his office and had the nerve to say I disagreed with his vote to extend unemployment benefits through Christmas for people who had been harmed. 3 months. And I said, look, as an American, I'm willing to pay a little bit of extra taxes for that 3-month period of time. I would not mind. And I'm, considered in the lower element of the whole thing at the time. And they're like, thank you very much. Well, they called the Capitol Police and said that I threatened to murder their staff.
Oh, my goodness.
And I was investigated by Sergeant Donica of the Eugene Police Department. He was a detective who, before he called me, had been investigating me for the last 3 or 4 days, trying to figure out. You can't, to say that about somebody to the Capitol Police, if this person threatened to murder our staff. Now, why did I do it? Now, an activist here in town said, anytime you call a congressman, especially Republican, and tell them they're going to harm someone, they will turn that around and say you threatened to kill them. And that was exactly what Mike Pence's office did. Now, this is the Vice President, Mike Pence, the same Mike Pence who's sitting in the White House. His staff said, now, what kind of culture does he create where he can hire people who can do things like that? That's who's in our White House. This is why I'm going to be on the streets on Saturday.
Right.
And this is why I call up Lindsey Graham's office and Chuck Grassley's office and say, how much longer are you guys going to defend these criminals in the White House? Because their behavior is criminal. That emoluments clause case did not get thrown out of the courts on merit. It got thrown out on jurisdiction. The court said, well, it's not our job to enforce the emoluments clause. It's Congress's, so we can't do anything for you. That's why they lost the case. That's not been reported. Talk about not reporting, Dave. So it's the same thing. You see, it's exactly the same forces that's promoting the nuclear industry that is actually demeaning and destroying our Constitution and destroying our way of life. So if people think that our country doesn't have something unique, think again, because they're spending billions of dollars to destroy it. And they put the idiot in chief in charge. That guy will say anything and do anything, as we are unfortunately finding out. So will Mike Pence. Mike Pence's office wasted the time of Sergeant Donica here, who had to investigate me, and ended up just kind of laughing at me when I blew off at him. I was so furious when I found out. I said, you should be filing. This is a waste of your time and our city money. We should file a formal complaint against this, which I did.
Yeah. And
of course, did I hear a word about anything from not even a single representative, not the mayor, not the police department, not any of them. So this is why I love your 8-minute, your podcast, your 15-minute podcast telling us, 8 minutes a day to be a superhero. Thank you for inventing that.
Yeah, but it times out. Go watch a Spider-Man movie sometime, Lonnie. That's all the time he needs to, take care of whichever bad guy. He'll get in a few cool lines. Make the web go over here and do that thing. 8 minutes later, done deal. You're in jail. That's how it works, right? So the thing is, the real key to making the impact that you can with that time, Lonnie, is putting time in the gym and being persistent and consistent, doing it every day, right? If you want to get in shape, we're going to the gym once a week or twice a week, is that going to get it done? Well, not if you really want to get in shape, not if you really want to, have the conditioning or the body that you want to have, right? You got to go in every day, chip away at it. And like I said, when I first started my activism with the Fukushima nuclear disaster, I knew nothing about Fukushima. I knew nothing about nuclear energy, none of that. but I knew that if I chipped away every day, I would get that knowledge. And eventually I'd be able to say, hey, look over here. Here's a great resource for you. Hey, look over here. Learn more about what this is. And for yourself, do your own research, right? And it's worked. People understand that now. Now, over the years, have we lost, good people along the way for whatever reasons? Yeah. We always will. That's commonplace with any fight that you're in, right? The trick is that you have to replace those people. And you do that with education and leading by example, right? Mm-hmm. If you say, it's one thing to say, oh, don't eat the fish, because, the radiation and this and that and blah, blah, blah. And then it's another thing to actually not eat the fish, when you're out with your friends and let them know why. You have got to be able to, take things on a personal level and stick to it and be consistent, be persistent, and know that you have backup. That was my message last week. We are all here for each other, and we need to stand strong together, right? So if one of us is feeling low and doesn't feel like they can go on, we need to be able to stand there and say, look, you can go on. We're still here for you. We can help you rise up again and be strong and be impactful and be a happy, productive person again. Because depression, it hits all of us. I don't think any activist will tell you at any point, it's like, oh, well, I'm just happy, scratchy all the time and, everything goes my way and blah, blah. No. We all have setbacks. We all have personal things in our lives. We all have, things that come up that, knock us down. But we have to be there for each other. And that was my big message last week. We got to stick together. Mm-hmm. We have got to stick together, especially on this, especially on, like you said, there's so many forces that are amassed against us, and they have these crazy ideas that we're trying to, come after them with pitchforks. We ain't got time for that. We've got way too many more important things to do than come knocking on your door, okay? And besides, we're the nonviolent ones, remember? If y'all want to, go behind, hide behind your shields and whatever, knock yourself out. I don't, like I said, I ain't got time for that. What I do have time for is the Fuku fighters. I have time for the people who care, for the ones who really, have dug in deep on this and, want to continue. And that's why I keep doing what I do. Every week I'm like, what's the show going to be about this week? Well, it's going to be about whatever happens this week. And then, it just comes together. And I'm happy that, yourself and other Fuku fighters and certainly my family that get something out of it. That's who I initially started making these for, was for my nieces and nephews to get them up to speed with all that's going on with this whole thing. I want everybody to be happy and successful in their lives. I want everyone to grow up healthy. I don't want to have the specter of thyroid cancer and leukemia and heart disease and all this stuff that comes not just from nuclear, but from everything else that we expose ourselves to now. We need to change that. We ain't dead yet, so we still can. So let's do something about it in a collective and smart fashion and, get it done. I know that we can, and I know that the next generation will, so we just need to give them the opportunity and the tools and the resources that they need to do it.
That's right. We need to really develop that science of remediation and allow that to be big. So, Dave, we have about 20 seconds left. I want to thank you for joining us. It's been really great. I hope you'll come back in a month or 6 weeks or so.
Always a pleasure, Lonnie. Whenever you make the call, I'll be there for sure.
Well, please go to Dave's website, Operation Save the Earth, and, find out what you can do. Put your courage feet on. Take some action. As Dave said, 8 minutes a day is all it takes. And Step one. That's exactly right. He has steps 1, 2, 3, 4 on his site. So go there and learn them all. Okay. Take care, you guys, and put your courage feet on. Talk to you later.